वक्रतुंड महाकाय सूर्यकोटिसमप्रभ निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणी विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। गुरवे सर्वलोकानां भिषजे भवरोगिणां निधये सर्वविद्यानां दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणम् सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयम् नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। साक्षात्कृतं दयानन्दं परमार्थस्वरूपिणम् तत्त्वज्ञानप्रशास्तारम् प्रणतोऽस्मि परं पदम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। नत्वा श्रीभारती तीर्थविद्यारण्यमुनीश्वरौ
नत्वा श्रीभारतीतीर्थविद्यारण्यमुनीश्वरौ
अधीमहे पञ्चदशीं कैवल्यपदसिद्धये।
अधीमहे पञ्चदशीं कैवल्यपदसिद्धये।
चित्रदीप प्रकरणं श्लोक नंबर 22। अधिष्ठानतया देहद्वया वच्छिन्न चेतनः
अधिष्ठानतया देहद्वया वच्छिन्न चेतनः
कूटवन्निर्विकारेण स्थितः कूटस्थ उच्यते।
कूटवन्निर्विकारेण स्थितः कूटस्थ उच्यते।
कूटस्थे कल्पिता बुद्धिस्तत्र चित्प्रतिबिम्बकः
कूटस्थे कल्पिता बुद्धिस्तत्र चित्प्रतिबिम्बकः।
प्राणानां धारणा जीवः संसारेण संयुज्यते।
प्राणानां धारणा जीवः संसारेण संयुज्यते।
जलव्योम्ना घटाकाशो यथा सर्वस्तिरोहितः
लव्योऽन्नतकटाकशो यथा सर्वस्तिरोहितः
तथा जीवेन कूटस्थः सोऽन्योन्याध्यास उच्यते।
तथा
जीवेन कूटस्थः सोऽन्योन्याध्यासोच्यते
अयं जीवो न कूटस्थं विविनक्ति कदाचन।
अयं जीवो न कूटस्थं विविनक्ति कदाचन
अनादिरविकोऽयम् रविवेकोऽयं मूला विद्येति गम्यताम्।
अनादिरविवेकोऽयं मूला विद्येति गम्यताम्
विक्षेपावृत्तिरूपाभ्यां द्विधा विद्या व्यवस्थिता।
विक्षेपावृत्तिरूपाभ्यां द्विधा विद्या विवस्थिता
न भाति नास्ति कूटस्थ इत्यापादनमावृतिः।
नास्ति नास्ति कूटस्थ इत्यापादनमावृत्तिः
Not ityapadana, it's a typo. Ityapadanam, apadanam, not apadanam. Ajnani vidusha prishtak kutastam na prabudhyate.
प्रबुध्यते
न भाति नास्ति कूटस्थ इति बुद्ध्वा वदत्यपि।
भाति नास्ति कूटस्थ इति वदत्यपि
स्वप्रकाशे कुतो विद्यातां विना कथमावृतिः।
स्वप्रकाशे कुतो विद्यातां विना कथमावृतिः
इत्यादि तर्कजालानि स्वानुभूतिर्ग्रसत्यसौ।
इत्यादि तर्कजालानि स्वानुभूतिर्ग्रसत्यसौ
We have seen up to shloka number 28. I will explain again in English from here, just in case if you miss the point. Kutastha Chaitanyam is taken up first. And it is compared to the pot space, Kathakasha. Brahma Chaitanyam compared to Mahakasha. And Jiva to Jalakasha. And Ishvara to Meghakasha. The four Akashas and four Chitta Chaturdha iti. Between Jiva and Kutastha, there is a confusion. The author explains the confusion. Starting from shloka number 22 onwards up to 103. Shloka 103rd shloka, the discussion is on the Jiva and the Kutastha. Discussion on confusion between Jiva and Kutastha. So, who is Jiva and who is Kutastha? They are explained here. Deghadvaya avachinna chetanaha. Kutastaha. As Akasha is Samanyam, so too Chaitanyam is Samanyam. Kutastha Chaitanyam is Deghadvaya avachinna chetanaha. Shuddha Chaitanyam enclosed in the Shariram gets the name Kutastha Chaitanya. Enclosed in the Shariram means how can the Shariram be enclosed? How can the Chaitanya be enclosed by the Shariram? Seemingly enclosed, seemingly conditioned by the boundaries of the Shariram. But the Chaitanyam cannot be conditioned. If it is conditioned, then it is subject to divisions, subject to limitations. Then it is not Chit. Cannot be Chaitanya. Therefore, seemingly conditioned. Like Akasha is seemingly conditioned by the pot. That is why compared to the pot space, Kutastha Chaitanyam is compared to Gata Akasha. Therefore, Kutastha Chaitanyam is nothing but Shuddha Chaitanyam eva. Only thing is, it is seemingly conditioned by the boundaries, by the boundaries of the Shariram. Like the Mahakasha, enclosed in the pot gets the name Ghatakasha. Akasha is one, but still gets the name Ghatakasha. Tadvat. Degadvaya, that is Stula and Sukshma Deha. Degadvayavachinnaha. Degadvayavachinnaha. Deha. This Kutastha Chaitanyam is obtained in this two Shariram. Adhishtanataya Tritiya, Itambute Tritiya, in the form of Isa. In the form of Adhishtanataya Degadvayavachin Chinna Chetanaha. Nirvikarena Stitaha Kutastha Chaitanyam. Kutastha Chaitanyam Nirvikarena. It is unlike Chidabhasa, which undergoes change as it identifies with the Sharira. Jiva is Chidabhasa. Chitabhasa, Chaitanyam reflected in the Antakhana, that is Chidabhasa. Jiva is Chidabhasa. This I is Chidabhasa. We say I, use I, ahamiti, that I, all the loaded, this loaded I is Chidabhasa. I is identified with this Shariram, with this mind. So therefore, in keeping with the I, the mind Chidabhasa changes. I. Therefore, Chidabhasa is Savikarena Sitaha. Kutastaha is Nirvikarena Sitaha. The difference between Kutastha Chit, and Chidabhasa is Chidabhasa Savikarena Sitaha, because being identified with the mind, therefore it changes. Chidabhasa changes. Chit doesn't change. Kutastha doesn't change. That's why Nirvikarena Sitaha. Kutavati Tishtati, therefore Kutaha. Kutaha, meaning anvil. That is one meaning. Anvil means it is Achalaha. That is the idea. It is called the Kuta, the tool which is used by Lohakara, by the ironsmith, is called, that anvil is called Kutaha. It is Achalaha, doesn't move. That's why on which he would keep the iron pieces and do bending, etc., all the operations. Similarly, here, Chaitanya, that since as the anvil is Adhishtanam, similarly, Kuta Chaitanyam is Adhishtanam. Kutaha meaning achalaha, not, it doesn't move. Achalaha, tatha adhishtanam. Shankaracharya gives in the Gita Bhashyam, I think the 15th chapter, somewhere. The word Kutaha meaning Rashi. Rashi is heap. A heap, it is Rashi. Achalaha, that which cannot be shaken, that is Kutaha. Kuta also can mean Maya. Kuta also can also mean Maya. So Kute Mayayam Adhishtanataha Titaha Kutastaha iti uchyate. Therefore Kutaha, Kutasta, Kutaha is Achalaha. So that is the Adhishtanam. Kutasta Chaitanyam is Adhishtanam. Kutaha meaning Achalaha. Here Kutasta Chaitanyam is Adhisthana Chaitanyam. That is Nirvikara. Chidavasa is the Jiva, which is Savikara. So Jiva is Savikarena Sitaha. The next shloka he says, Kutaste buddhihi kalpita samsarena jivaha sayujyate. That is a reflected space in the water of the water kept in the pot water. That is Jalakasha. That is a drishtanta for jiva. Pot space is a drishtanta for Kutastha, and Jalakasha is a drishtanta for jiva. Because the space is reflected. Similarly, Chaitanyam is reflected in the Antakaranam Chidabhasa. The reflected space, reflected Chaitanyam. Therefore, reflected space is the Drishtanta. Space reflected means reflecting medium is pot water. The water is the comparison for Buddhi. So, Jalakasha is the Drishtanta for Jiva. Jiva is reflected Chaitanyam Chidabhasa. Kutaste Kalpita Buddhihi. Kalpita is superimposed. Kalpita, visualized, Kalpana, imagined. So Kutaste Kalpita Buddhihi, this Jiva, this Chidabhasa, is it Satyam or not? It is Satyam. It is Satyam. How can it be Satyam? It has Vyavaharika Satyam. It has transactional reality. Not Paramarthika. Kutastha Paramarthika. This Kutaste, this Buddhihi Kalpita, the Buddhi which is visualized, imagined in the Kutastha. Therefore, the Jiva, which is reflected Chaitanyam, Chidabhasa, it has Vyavaharika Satyam, transactional reality. Antakaranam has dependent reality. Buddhihi Kalpita. Mind being what it is. Mind is not subjective reality. It is objective reality created by Ishvara. In Kutastha, the Buddhi is Kalpita. Kutaste Kalpita. Visualize in the Kutastha Chaitanya. Satya Chaitanya is Mithya Buddhihi. Mithya Buddhihi Kalpita. Satya Chaitanya is Mithya Buddhihi. Mithya has got Vyavaharika Sattvam. Therefore, Mithya means it is not absolutely non-existent. Mithya is that which has dependent reality. So therefore, this pratibimba, reflection has its dependence on the original. Therefore, pratibimbakaha, tatrachit pratibimbakaha. Putra, Kutaste, Buddhi, Kalpita, and Buddhau. Kalpita Buddhau chit pratibimbakaha. This Pratibimbachit in the Buddhi, that is called Chidabhasa. It is called Jivaha. The Chitta which is Pratibimbitam in the Buddhi. Pratibimba Chaitanyam in the Buddhi is called Jivaha. So therefore Jivaha Pranadharanat Jivaha Uchyate. Saha samsarena yujyate. So which is samsari now? Kutastha is samsari or Jiva is samsari? Kutastha is not samsari. Kutastha is always asamsari. Jiva is only samsari. Jiva is only mahasamsari. So when mahasamsari is very active in the world, the samsari, kutastha, which is adhisthana, which gives satta and spurti to this mahasamsari jiva. The samsari, mahasamsari jiva is always busy in the world playing different roles. Therefore, samsarena sajyate. So the difference between kutastha and jiva pointed out. Kutastha is nirvikarena sitaha, jiva is savikarena sitaha. Kutaste kalpita buddhihi tatra buddhau chit pratibimbakaha jivaha bhavati. Therefore, jiva is pratibimbita chaitanyam. Chaitanyam reflected in the antakaranam. That is, chaitanyam reflected in the buddhi and antakaranam is jivaha. Saha samsari. Then yatha jala vyomna ghatakashaha sarvaha tirogitaha bhavati tata jivena kutastaha tirogitaha. Saheva anyonya adhyasaha iti uchyate. This jiva and chidabhasa. This jiva and chidabhasa, like the pot space, which is covered by jalakasha. Yata ghatakashaha jala vyomna tirogitaha. Ghatakasha is tirogitaha. It is tirogitaha covered. This ghatakasha is covered by jalakasha. So too, consciousness, the chaitanyam, the chitta, kutastha is as though tirogita, concealed, covered by the Chidabhasa. So Jivena Kutastaha is tirogitaha, not really as if. There cannot be real covering. As if covered. That is Jivena Kutastaha is Chidabhasena, this Kutastaha. Because in every pratyaya, the chit is there, bodham prati, pratibodha viditam hatam. Chidabhasa is enlivened by chitta, and the Chidabhasa covers as though chitta. Therefore, the Chidabhasa totally engrossed in itself and in the world. Therefore, the Chidabhasa misses the Chaitanyam, the Buddhi, obtained in the Buddhi, the Chidabhasa misses the Chaitanyam, that is Jiva. Jiva fails to recognize this Chaitanyam. Therefore, Jivena Kutastaha Tirogitaha Bhavati. Chidabhasa being engrossed in itself, therefore misses itself, that is Chitta Chaitanyam, and therefore what happens when it misses itself, then there will be naturally superimposition takes place, mutual superimposition. When Tirodhana takes place, when covering takes place, veiling, then Anyonya Adhyasa takes place. Anyasya Anyasmin Adhyasaha, Anyonya Adhyasaha. Samsara belongs to whom? Samsara belongs to Chidabhasa, Jiva. Chidabhasa is Jiva. Samsara belongs to Chidabhasa. And it is Adhyastam in the Kotastha. Therefore, Chitta Chidabhasa, now they are Agatita Gatana, Patiyasi Maya, that Maya makes the impossible possible. Similarly, here Chitta Chidabhasa, now they have combined, they have joined, combined together, unholy combination, resulting in Anyonya Adhyasa. Therefore, what happens? Chidabhasa, which is Mahasamsari, Chitta Samsari, now, because of this Anyonya Adhyasa, mutual superimposition, Chitta also seems to be a samsari. Chitta which cannot be covered, it is covered. And Chitta is Mahasamsari. Chidabhasa which is Mahasamsari. And because of Anyonya Adhyasa, Chitta appears to be a samsari. So, Chitta which cannot be covered is covered. Jivena, Kutastaha. And Chidabhasa is samsari, not Chitta. Because of Adhyasa, what happens? Chitta also appears to be a samsari. Appears, seemingly only, appears, not really. Therefore, Tirodhanam bhavati, Tirohitaha. So, I am Jivaha, therefore, now Jiva already done the mistake. Therefore, Kadachana, Kutastam, na Bibinakti, I am Jivaha. I am Anadihi Avivekaha, this Anadi Avidya Aviveka. This Aviveka is called Mula Vidya. This Jivaha, Kutastam na Vivinakti, doesn't understand, discern clearly. Kutasta. Kadachana. Never knows distinctly. This Aviveka, which is Anadi, is the Karanam, Avidya. The absence of Pratak Karanam, Pratak Bhava, is due to Anadi Aviveka. Aviveka between Jiva and Kutastha, confusion, and its confusion is beginningless. This Anadi Aviveka is called Mula Vidya, original ignorance. Iti Gamyatam, fundamental ignorance, primal ignorance. Therefore, Karta Jiva, therefore Jiva becomes Karta, Bhokta. Therefore, Karta Jiva doesn't know Kutastha, which is Akarta, Abhokta. Swarupam of Jiva is Kutastha only. Kutastha cannot be Karta, cannot be Abhokta. But what happens is Jiva takes himself to be a Karta, therefore Karta Jiva. Jiva, Aham Karta, Aham Bhokta. The Jivatvam itself is Kalpita, Vidya Kalpita. And therefore this Karta Jiva doesn't know this Akarta Kutastha. The Chidabhasa doesn't know the Chit. Chidabhasa is Karta Bhokta. Chit is Akarta Abhokta. Therefore Chidabhasa misses the Chit because of Avidya. Because of Avidya, Avidya is the Karanam. So Avidya, this Adhyasa is this mutual superimposition. Atasmin tad buddhihi. Atasmin tad buddhihi. That is Adhyasaha. That which is not in which there is that buddhi. So Kartrutvam, Bhoktrutvam is not there in Kutastha. And Jiva is not different from Kutastha, really speaking. But because of avidyajanya adhyasayana, this Chidabhasa, which is essentially Chit only, not knowing that this Akarta Kutastha, not knowing, Jiva becomes Karta Bhokta, therefore Samsarena Yujyate, for which all this, what is the reason? This avidya. This avidya alone is the cause. And this avidya, Atar has said, avidya as two Shakti, Avarana Shakti and Vikshepa Shakti. Avarana Shakti is concealing power, and Vikshepa Shakti is creative power of creation. Therefore, Vikshepa Avritti Rupabhyam. This is also Itambhute Tritiya in the form of covering and creating and concealing and creating. This avidya, dvida vyavasthita, avidya, dvida vyavasthita of two power, two types of power. So avritihi, first avriti and then vikshepa. First avriti, avritam, avritihi is concealing, covering, and vikshepa is projection. Rope is concealed, avaranam, and projections are made, and projections are many. Once covering is done, then projections can be countless projections. So for this avidya expressed in the form of avarana shakti, and it is because of that avarana shaktya nabhati nasti kutastaha iti apadanam avritihi. The statement that the person says, I do not know, nabhati, nasti, nabhati, nabhati, not there, and it doesn't, nabhati doesn't shine, nabhati. That is avarana shakti. Nasti means doesn't exist. Therefore, nabhati, and therefore nabhati it is. Existence always presupposes knowledge, jnana. If knowledge is not there, then existence cannot be established. A thing exists, how do you know? Because it is presupposed by a knowledge. You have the means of knowledge, you operate the means of knowledge, pramanam, and by which you know the object and the existence of the object is known. Otherwise, how do you establish the existence of an object? Any object. A flower is there, a rose flower. The existence of the rose flower is presupposed by the knowledge. So therefore, knowledge always presupposes the existence. Manadina meya siddhihi. Therefore, if knowledge has to be there, then only existence can be established. Knowledge is not there. How will you establish the existence of a thing? Therefore, here the avriti brings about a situation na bhati nasti iti. Nasti na bhati. So this nasti na bhati. Nasti, when you say doesn't exist, doesn't exist also is a knowledge that it doesn't exist. So the non-existence of a thing. It doesn't exist, na bhati, not available for, not available. Na bhati, nasti. So that also, it is pratyaksha. It is pratyaksha. Later, the author would say that it cannot be falsified by tarka. So that's why he says, it slowly builds up that argument. So, iti apadanam avritti. Avritti is what is explained in the shloka 26. Dabhati nasti kutastaha. Who says? The jiva chidabhasa says. Chidabhasa existence is because of the chita. And chidabhasa jiva says kutastaha nasti kutastaha nabhat. How is it possible? It is because of this avritti. Apadanam avritti brings about this apadayati. This apadanam is called avritti. Therefore, only when vidusha prishtaha, ajnani, what does it say? Kutastam na prabudyate iti. The wise person asks jnani. Na bhati na asti iti. Kutastaha nasti na bhati iti. Buddha vadati. So, Purva Pakshi argues, if Kutastha is, the next shloka says 28, if Kutastha is Jnana Swarupam, Ajnani says Kutastha Nasti Nabhati. So the Purva Pakshi says, if Kutastham is Jnana Swarupam, see, when Ajnani says Nasti Nabhati, it means avidya is, ignorance is revealed. Now, Father Purvapakshi argues, if Kutastha is Jnana Swarupam, you say, then how can there be avidya? Because avidya and Kutastha, they are opposed to each other. Kutastham is like light, avidya is like darkness. Tavah prakashavati viruddha sabhavatvat. Like in Adhyasa Bhashya, Shankaracharya says, they are opposed to each other. Chitta is all pervasive. And say Chitta is all pervasive, and avidya, how can it accommodate avidya? Iti Purvapakshi asks this question. How can avidya be there in Chitta when Chitta is all pervasive? If avidya is not there, then Anyonya Adhyasa is not possible. If Adhyasa is not there, then moksha through Adhyasa Nivritti also not possible. Then Adhyasa Bhashyam itself is not required. It's not only not required, it is wrong. Adhyasa Bhashya. Therefore, all of them, because of that avidya and kutastha cannot coexist. That is what Purvapakshi says. If we accept what Purvapakshi says, then Adhyasa Bhashya written by Shankaracharya itself will prove to be wrong. Kutastha is Jnana Swarupam. How can there be avidya? In fact, for that we are going to say, how can it accommodate avidya? That is where Adhyasa Bhashya is there. It can. Where the avidya is located? Avidya is located very well in the Chaitanyam only. Avidya has got no ashraya or no support. According to Purvapakshi. When Kutasa Chaitanyam is all pervasive, then avidya has no ashraya. No ashraya, no support. It means avidya not there. Avidya not there means Kutastha also not there. So therefore, if avidya is not there, Purvapakshi, that is what Purvapakshi intends to prove. If Kutastam is Jnana Swarupam and it is Sarvavyapi, all pervasive, then how can avidya be there? It seems to be a genuine question. See, when only light is there, how can darkness be? How can light accommodate darkness? They are opposed to each other. It's a valid question. That is what Purvapakshi has. So, Prakashe Kuto Vidya. Tamina Katam Avritihi. We need not stop the Tamina Katam Avritihi. If Avriti is not there, Adhyasa also not possible. If Adhyasa is not there, if Adhyasa is not there, Moksha through Avidya Nivritti also not possible. So, Purvapakshi asked this intelligent question. Therefore, according to Purvapakshi, this Avidya and Kutastha cannot coexist. When Chaitanyam is all pervasive, Avidya has got no ashraya, no support. Therefore, these are not possible according to Purvapakshi. This is the, in fact, main argument of Vishishtadvaiti. Vishishtadvaiti, they argue this, you say this Avidya, how can Avidya be located? How can Avidya be in Kutastha? Saprakashe Kutaste, Chaitanya, tam Avidya Bhavati, Avidyayava Stitihi. It seems to be a valid argument. For that, we'll give a strong argument later. But here, Acharya gives important argument. As I said, this is the main arguments of Visishta Dvaitin's argument. So, Prakashe Kuto Vidya. They are Mahapurva Pakshi because they challenge the very root of Advaita. We say Jnana Deva Kaivalyam. Jnanam means it implies avidya is there, therefore Jnana Deva Kaivalyam. For them, they refute this. Jnanam cannot give moksha at all. Therefore, the opposition is a powerful opposition. Avidya mina katam mavritihi ityadi tarka jalani. This host of reasoning, just simply we say this argument has got no basis. Why? Because asau svanubhutihi grasati. This argument has got no basis because of this anubhava siddham. Avidya is intimately experienced by everyone. Aham brahma na janami. That is anubhuti. Aham na janami. It is anubhava pramana. When something is experienced, you cannot challenge that experience by your tarka, your reasoning. Between tarka and anubhava, which is stronger, anubhava is stronger. Tapos svanubhutihi grasati. All the tarka jalani. All tarkas are swallowed by this svanubhutihi because there is no greater pramanam than this anubhuti, anubhava, pratyaksha. So therefore, if you ask, so Prakasha Kotasta, Chaitanyam and Avidya, how can they go together when they are opposed to each other? One is Jnana Swarupam, other one is Tamas Swarupam. How can there be Avidya in Kotasta? If you say, then there is Pratyaksha Anubhava. The Jiva Ditabhasa says, I don't know. Aham na janami. Aham Brahma na janami. Na bhati. Asti. He says, na janami. So that itself is the Anubhava, Pratyaksha Anubhava. So this avidya is, therefore it is svanubhuti. Na bhati, I don't know, na janami. Nasti, it is not na bhati, it doesn't, I don't know, therefore it is not there. That is avidya. Na bhati, nasti. It is na bhati, therefore it is not there. Nasti. This is avidya. For which do we require any pramanam? It is svanubhuti. This avidya is svanubhuti. Therefore, this tarka jalani, this tarka, how can this tarka challenge the anubhava? Avaranam is anubhava. Therefore, when there is pratyaksha siddha, how can logic will prove it to be wrong? No logic will work. Therefore, asau svanubhuti tarka jalani grasati. Suppose if one doesn't accept anubhava pramana, if one doesn't accept anubhava pramana, then one cannot arrive at the truth at all. You cannot dismiss the anubhava. What is experience that can be explained through tarka, but experience cannot be challenged by tarka. That is why I said this between tarka and this anubhava pramanam gari yaha tarkena anubhava pramanam gari yaha. It is powerful. Therefore, what is the proof for avidya? I don't know. That is svanubhutihi. That is a pramanam for avidya. The svanubhutihi is a pramanam for avidya. Therefore, avidya exists. And that cannot be dismissed by tarka. That is what the Acharya says. This is a simple argument. Stronger argument can be given. That will be given later. This avidya, how can this avidya be located in Kutastha? Yes, avidya itself, avidya cannot enjoy separate existence. Vidya also has its ashraya in what? In Chaitanyam alone. Not knowing also has its ashraya in Chaitanyam alone. Not knowing, I don't know, that itself is a piece of knowledge. That I don't know, that avidya. Avidya also has its ashraya only in Chaitanyam, because Chaitanyam reveals the ignorance. Ignorance also, I don't know that ignorance also, that Puranam, that not knowing, that is revealed by what? That is revealed by Chit. It is also enlightened, enlivened by the Chit alone. So therefore, when Visishtadvaitis and they argue by giving logic. For them, we say, when Anubhava is there, your logic will not work. The Svanubhutihi, avidya is Svanubhutihi. There is no doubt. This avidya, aham, ajnani, avidya, for that, we don't require any pravanam. It is Svanubhuti, nasti, nabhati, kutastha iti, anubhutihi. A person says, I don't know. I don't know the kutastha chaitanyam, therefore it is not there. It is Svanubhutihi. It is avidya, Svanubhutihi. How are you going to challenge by tarka when something is Svanubhutihi experienced? Anubhava siddha it is. Anubhava pramana. Pratyaksha it is. That tarka will not work. If you say something, try to prove by giving some drishtanta, then we give another drishtanta to nullify it. For tarka gives, the Tarkika gives a drishtanta, an example, to dismiss a point. We can give better example to dismiss a point. Therefore, by Drishtanta, we cannot come to any conclusion. Therefore, Tarka has limitation and it is secondary only. Tarka can be applied when something is corroborated by some pramana. Without pramana, Tarka alone you cannot prove. Naisha Tarkena Matirapaneya, Katopanishad says, you have seen. So therefore, Tarka Jalani Swanabhuti Grasati. Up to that we have seen. This is 28 shloka. So even when asked by Jnani, Vidusha, then Ajnani says, I don't know. Swanabhuti is there. Anubhava Siddhi is there. That itself is a proof for the existence of avidya. So avidya also is enlivened, enlightened. It is also enlightened by the chit alone. Therefore, avidya as its locus, ashraya in chit alone, chaitanyam alone. Therefore, tatprakashe kuto vidya, that argument is dismissed if you try to put forth the argument by tarka. Anubhava pramana is stronger, therefore it it swallows the tarka jalani. Then the next shloka, let us read. स्वानुभूतावविश्वासे तर्कस्याप्यनवस्थितेः
भूतावविश्वासे तर्कस्याप्यनुवस्थिते
तर्कस्याप्यनुवस्थितेः
कथं वा तार्किकमन्यस्तत्त्व निश्चयमाप्नुयात्
कथं वा
एकं
तार्किकं
मन्यस्तत्त्वनिश्चयमाप्नुयात्
मन्यस्तत्त्वनिश्चयमाप्नुयात्
If Anubhava Pramana is not stronger than Tarka. Even Shruti also uses Tarka, that is Shruti Anukula Tarka. By Tarka alone, you cannot establish anything. That is why those people who argue to prove the existence of God, no, by Tarka, you cannot argue with them. Because it is wrong. By Tarka, you cannot establish. So, therefore, anything we discuss that must be supported or revealed by some pramana, and that establishment of that what is revealed by pramana can be, for that tarka can be a support. So tarka alone is not an individual pramana. Even we say yatra yatra dumaha tatra tatra vannihi. That vyapti is we apply the same. It's Anumana Pramana, but Anumana Pramana as its basis in the Mula Pramana Pratyaksha, supported by Pratyaksha. On that, over that we extend our Tarka and then try to prove that wherever there is smoke, there must be fire, because I have seen that in the kitchen, fire is there, smoke is there, therefore fire. Therefore, when I see smoke on the top of the mountain, I infer, it's logical, infer that mountain must be on fire. Oh, because I see smoke on the mountain, there is fire. Independently, we cannot arrive at, because if it is not corroborated by my own perception in the kitchen. There I have Pratyaksha Anubhava and extend, and based on that, I infer that mountain is on fire. So for logic will work like that only. Mountain is on fire, mountain, that smoke on the mountain, therefore there must be fire. Tarka alone independently cannot establish the existence of fire on the top of the mountain. It has got pratyaksha anubhava, own pratyaksha anubhava, my own perception in the kitchen. So therefore, every tarka will operate based on some pramana. And tarka is a support to establish a point. Independently, it cannot establish anything. Therefore, here author says, if anubhava pramana swanubhutau avishvase, swanubhutau स्वानुभूत स्वानुभवे स्वस्य अनुभवः स्वस्य अनुभूतिः स्वानुभूतिः in one's own direct experience स्वानुभूतिः स्वानुभवे स्वस्य अनुभूतिः स्वानुभूतिः अविश्वासे अविश्वासे अविश्वासः न विश्वासः अविश्वासः तस्मिन् अविश्वासे श्रद्धा अभावे स्वानुभूतो श्रद्धा अभावे सति तर्कस्य युक्तेः तर्कस्य युक्तेः अनवस्थितेः तर्कस्य अनवस्थितिः भवति स्वानुभूत अविश्वासे कृते सति तर्कस्य तर्कस्यापि अनवस्थितिः भवति. If anubhav pramana is not accepted, truth cannot be arrived at. Tarka cannot be used to arrive at truth. Tarkasyapi anavastitehe. Tarka is non-conclusive by itself because as it doesn't have independency in being a pramana. Tarka is not a pramana. Pramana can be of two types. Primary pramana, secondary pramana. Secondary pramana is that on that the primary pramana depends. Primary pramana, on primary pramana, secondary pramana as dependency. So, secondary pramanas are called upajivaka pramanam. It's a technical term. Upajivaka pramanam, secondary pramanam, they are not independent pramanam. Upajivaka pramanam, upajivati, it survives depending on something. That is upajivaka pramanam. Primary pramanam is upajivya pramanam. Upajivaka, upajivya. Upajivya, primary pramanam, independent pramanam. Upajivaka, secondary pramanam, a pramanam which has dependency on primary pramanam. Now, tarka falls under the category of upajivaka pramanam, secondary pramanam, because it depends on the data collected by pratyakshadi pramana. Depends on the data collected by upajivya pramana, pratyakshadi pramana. On that upajivaka pramana, tarka pramana can operate. All pramanas like this Anumana, Arthapati, Upamana, etc., all these are upajivaka pramanam only. Because upajivya pramana is pratyaksha. All these are upajivaka pramana. Now, Shastra is upajivya pramana or upajivaka pramana. Shastra pramanam is upajivya pramanam or upajivaka pramanam. Don't say upajivaka pramana, then we have problem. Words of Shastram or Shabdam Shastram is primary pramana. Veda Shabda is primary pramana, independent pramana. Lokika Shabdas are dependent pramana. Lokika Shabda can be Lokika or Vedika. Veda Shabdas are primary pramana, upajivya pramana. The Lokika Shabdas are upajivaka pramana. So, therefore, Shastra pramanam is upajivya. So for knowledge arrived at by is upajivaka pramana, that is secondary, means they have to be corroborated by pratyaksha pramana. They have to be corroborated by the pratyaksha pramana. Since tarka is secondary, therefore what tarka says doesn't have the final say. It doesn't have any finality. Therefore, it doesn't have finality, then anavastitihi bhavati. Anavastitihi is a dosha, anavastha dosha. Therefore, swanabhuta avishvase tarkasyapi anavastitehe, because tarka has got this anavastha dosha. Anavastha dosha, anavastha is infinite regress, anavastha dosha. You try to prove by logic, by your tarka. The tarka will have another tarka, counter tarka, and it will have another tarka, it will have another, like that, it will go on. It will never be ending anavastha dosha. It is upajivaka pramana. Without, it is not upajivya, therefore, without corroborated by upajivya pramana, this tarka, upajivaka pramana, cannot have any final say. It is not independent. Therefore, swanabhutau avishvase tarkasyapi anavastitihi bhavati. Therefore, tasmat anavastitehe katam va tarkika manyaha katam kena prakareణ कथम संभवति नैव संभवति आक्षेपार्थे प्रश्नः कथम संभवति न संभवति तार्किकं मन्यः अहं महान् तार्किकः इति आत्मानं मन्यमानः यः कः शुष्कतार्किकः तार्किकमन्यः इस् नैस् वर्ड् कुत कुतार्किकः शुष्कतार्किकः तार्किकम् आत्मानं मन्यमानः आत्मानं तार्किकं मन्यते इति तार्किकमन्यः तार्किकमन्यः derived by adding the pratyaya khash pratyaya atmamane khash iti sutrena khash pratyaya bhavati, then mum agama comes, then you get this word atmamane khash. Sutram is the Panini Sutram. Khash is a krit pratyaya, sarvadhatuka krit. I sent you other dhatuka krit document. Sarvadhatuka krit also is a like Shatru Shanach, very khash pratyaya also. Atmamane khash. By that sutram, kash pratyaya is added. Atmamane, atmanam tarkikam manyate iti tarkika manyaha. Kash pratyaya as well as mum agama will come. We will see. But tarkika manyaha, those who consider oneself to be a great logician, tarkika manyaha. Tatam va tarkika manyaha tatva nischayam apnuyat. तत्वस्य निश्चयं परमार्थ सत्यस्य निश्चयं दृढ़ निश्चयं कथम आपनुयात् तत्व निश्चयं तत्व ज्ञानम वस्तु वस्तु तत्व ज्ञानम परमार्थ निर्णयम तत्व निश्चयं तत्वस्य निश्चयं तत्व निश्चयं आपनुयात् विन्देत् कथम अहम अज्ञः इति that is it is स्वानुभूतिः अहम अज्ञः इति स्वानुभूतिः कथम तर्केण निरस्यति तर्केण निरसनम् अहम अज्ञः इति स्वानुभूतिः स्वस्य अनुभवस्य अविश्वासः भवति. If tarka dismissing swanubhuti is dishonoring the one's experience. You're challenging one's experience by your tarka. Tarkasya swanubhu Swanubhutehe Swanubhavasya Anadaram. If Tarka will do that, we'll dismiss Tarka, not Swanubhutihi. Because Swanubhutihi is Upajivya. Tarka is Upajivaka. Therefore, Kevala Tarkena Kadapi Ekasmin Nirnaye Tarkaha Kevalaha Tarkaha Kadapi Ekasmin Nirnaye na Tishtati. Tarkika Manyaha Yadyapi Tarkika Kushalaha Bhavati Tatapi Swarabhutehe Nirasanam Kartum na Shaknoti. Why we say? Because यदि कुशलेन तार्किकेन एकः तर्कः स्थापितः सः एव अन्येन कुशलेन तार्किकेन खण्ड्यते. If you establish, if a tarkika, one who considers himself to be a great logician, if he says one, if he supports his point by giving a logic, that logic can be countered by another logic. There will be another better person who can give a better logic. Parena anyena kandiyate. Iti tarkasya सीमा न भवति. Therefore अनवस्था दोष अनवस्थितेः इति कारणात् तत्त्वनिश्चयं कथम् आप्नुयात् by तर्केण न. यः आत्मानं तार्किकमन्यः अहं बुद्धिमान् तार्किकः इति यः मन्यते सः यदि स्वानुभूतिं न स्वीकरोति केवलं तर्कम् एव आश्रयति तर्हि तत्त्वनिश्चयस्य वस्तुनिश्चयस्य वस्तुतत्त्वस्य निश्चयं कथं ज्ञातुं शक्नोति? न ज्ञातुं शक्नोति. Not possible. He cannot arrive at the tattvanishaya, the truth. तार्किकमन्यः कथं तत्त्वनिश्चयम् आप्नुयात्? How can he arrive at the conclusion, the truth? So without data, without upajivya pramana, you cannot arrive at a conclusion by upajivaka pramana. So therefore the author says katam va tarkikamanyah. Tarkikamanyah referring to the person. Tarkikamanyah tattvanishchayam katam apnuyat aksheparte prashnaha na apnuyat. In Brahma Sutra, second chapter, first pada, 11th sutra, there is a sutra, tarka pratishthanadapi, tarka pratishthanadapi. That reasonings derived from just mere speculation. They are countless. Argument given by one person is countered by another person who is more genius than the first person. Therefore, pure logical reasoning will not work. By that, we cannot arrive at a final thing. The same thing was said in Kathopanishad, Naisha Tarkena Matirapaneya Proktanena Iva Sujnanaya Preshta. So by Tarka, you cannot arrive at. Then how do you arrive at Anubhava Vasanam hi Brahmajnanam. So Brahmajnanasya Varivasanam केवलं तर्केण न भवति किन्तु अपरोक्षानुभूतौ एव भवति. It's ब्रह्मज्ञानम्, it is अपरोक्षानुभूति. You cannot arrive at by tarka, by logic. That's why in Gita also it said vyavasayatmika buddhihi ekeke kurudandana bhagushaha yanantascha buddhiyo vyavasayinam avyavasayinam. That is tarka nishtanam avyavasayinam buddhayaha bhagushakaha arantaha bhavanti. Therefore, by tarka you cannot arrive at. Then Tikakara says, Nanu anubhavasya ukta tarka virodena abhasatvat na tena tattva nishchaya iti ashankya anubhava pramanya अनभ्युपगमे केवल तर्कस्य अनिश्चयाकस्य स्वेन एव अभ्युपगतत्वात् न तार्किकस्य तत्त्वनिश्चयः क्वापि स्यात् इति आह स्वानुभूतौ इति। ननु अनुभवस्य उक्ततर्क विरोधेन आभासत्वात्। So अनुभवस्य, that which is experienced, अनुभवस्य उक्त तर्क विरोधेन, that opposite to tarka, विरोधेन आभासत्वात् न तेन तत्त्वनिश्चयः इति आशंक्य। तेन तत्त्वनिश्चय अनुभव is challenged by the tarka, and by tarka tattva-nishchayah, arriving at the truth. You cannot arrive at truth by anubhava, you can arrive at truth only by tarka iti. If it is question is, if doubt arises, anubhava pramanya anabhipagame, without accepting the anubhava pramanam, kevala tarkasya anishchayatmakasya, it will be anishchayatmakasya anyway. By kevala tarka, you cannot arrive at conclusively. Cannot arrive at conclusion. Svena eva abhipagamatvat, not tarkikasya, even tarkika also. Svena eva abhipagatatvat, when they don't acknowledge their own experience, then tarkikasya tattva nishchayaha na kvapi syat. Tattva nishchayaha yaha kvapi syat iti yaha. Then how can they arrive at tattva nishchaya? So even tarkikas svena eva abhipagamat na tarkikasya. Yaha tattva nishchayaha na tarkikasya kvapi tarkikasya na syat. Tarkika, the logicians, without apply even their own experience, if they try to establish a point by tarka, they cannot arrive at it. Therefore, svanubhuta viti, therefore swasya anubhuti, anubhava, experience is stronger than tarka, iti Acharya says. Next shloka we will see the next class. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Dhanyavadaha.
धन्यवादः
धन्यवाद गुरुजी।
धन्यवाद शरण्जी।
धन्यवाद।
धन्यवादः।